Kia ora koutou, welcome to QLDC's community funding webinar. We're just going to wait a few more minutes before we kick off, just to see if we have a few latecomers, and then we'll get into the presentation. In the meantime, there's a few points that we've added into the meeting chat link. You'll see in there that what we've done to manage the webinar is we've set up the chat tool so it's disabled, but there's another link called Q&A where you can write your questions. So you can submit any questions via the Q&A function at any time, and we'll respond at the end of the presentation. And you'll see another few useful links in the chat at the moment. So we'll just wait another couple of minutes and then we'll kick off. Thank you. So we've got about half of our registered people online already. So I'm just going to wait one more minute. And then we'll kick off. For those of you that have just come on, after I gave some initial points, please have a quick read of the meeting chat. There's a couple of notes in there about asking questions, and we'll be using the Q&A function, and then you've also got some useful notes and links. I think we're just checking through some technical issues on the note. One of our callers has said they can't see the notes. I'm just checking we can make those visible to everybody. Okay. We'll try and sort out that. If you can't see the notes, I'm just going to quickly read them out to you. So the chat tool is disabled, so it doesn't get queued with the question and answers feature on Teams. So you can submit questions via the question and answer function at any time, and we will respond to those questions at the end of the presentations. So I'll formally kick off the webinar now. Kia ora koutou, my name's Marie Day. I'm the Community Partnerships Manager at Queensland Lakes District Council. We're here this evening just to run through an overview of the community funding that's currently available through QLDC. I'm just going to open the meeting with a karakia, and then I'll get into an overview of what we're going to cover off in the session. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Ihi aka ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hahu, te he moriora. Kia ora, thank you. So we're just gonna, I'm just gonna provide a little session outline, and then I'll introduce you to the other speakers on the webinar with me. So we're just gonna do a bit of an introduction, and then each of us will provide an overview of the three QLDC funds that we currently have open. This is the Events Fund, the Community Fund, and the Waste Minimisation Community Fund. As I mentioned earlier, there's a Q&A function on Teams, so please use that to submit any questions. The chat function won't be working. That's not available to those on the webinar, so please use Q&A. We'll also provide an opportunity at the end for you to verbally ask your questions if you'd like to ask that way, but if you prefer, just pop them in the chat and then we'll respond to them once we get to them. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and we'll be sharing it on the QLDC website. So just a brief overview of the three funds. I mentioned those earlier, the QLDC Events Fund, which is currently open between the 2nd of April and the 30th of April. The QLDC Community Fund is the 9th of April to 7th of May, and the Waste Minimisation Community Fund, 15th of April through to the 7th of May. So my colleagues will go through a bit more detail around those once we get to each of them. But initially, I'm just going to do some introductions. So as I mentioned, my name is Marie Day. I'm the Community Partnerships Manager, and I have overall responsibility for the broader Community Fund. And I'm just going to hand over to introduce himself, Giovanni Stevens, who has recently joined the Community Partnerships team. Giovanni.
Hi, nice to meet you all. I've joined the team at QLDC to help support the efforts to grow and support the community here in Queenstown, Lakes District. My role will be to support all of the applicants going through the process. We're cutting over into the new system called Smarty Grants, and the intent is to make it very easy for everyone to apply. But if there are any troubles or issues, or you're needing more support, I'm here to help you all. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thanks, Gio. And Jan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Marie. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jan Maxwell, and I'm the Relationship Manager, Arts and Events. And part of my role is to manage and work through the events fund that's held annually. I also do a range of other funds, mainly to do with the arts side of things too. Thanks, Marie.
Thanks, Jan. And Kath.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Kath Butter. I work as a Senior Sustainability Advisor in the Property and Infrastructure team, and part of my role covers the management of the Waste Minimisation Community Fund that we hold as an annual contestable fund. Thanks, Marie.
Thanks, Kath. So you'll see on the slide there, we've also got some main contact emails for each of the different funds and the teams. You can go through the community funding email for everything though, and Gio will make sure Kath or Jan get those emails if they're specific to their fund. So as Gio mentioned, we've got an awesome new funding platform, which we're pretty excited about. This allows us to have a much more streamlined process around the funding process end to end. So you may have seen some of the communications come out around this this platform at the moment. So we've got Smarty Grants, and this can be accessed via the QLDC community funding page. I'm just quickly going to jump over to that just to show you. So we've got the QLDC page where you can come into the community section. On here, there's one of the areas is community funding. So you can come in here and there's a whole lot of information about the different community funds we run. You can click the green button to take you to the QLDC community funding platform. And down here, there's a whole lot of information about each of the different funds we run. At the moment, we're only running the community fund, the events fund, and waste minimisation through the new Smarty Grants platform. But over time, we'll be bringing on our other funds into the platform. But we're just doing this first, just to make sure we get these processes right. And we also will be taking the opportunity, if you're applying for any of these funds, to take some feedback on the process. So this is us continually trying to improve the process. So we welcome any feedback on it as well. So on here, you can click on to the community funding platform. So it's all registered, it's all branded like QLDC branding. So it won't look like, it will still look like QLDC pages, but you'll come in here and you can either log in if you already have a Smarty Grants login, or you can register your group here or yourself as an individual. So one moment, I'm just going to share that again. And then the third page here is the community funding page. So at the moment, if you were to go onto the main community funding page, it lists the three funds. It also shows the three funds, and you can link on each of these to take you through to these specific application forms. But you'll see there's a number of useful bits of information here, including the QLDC privacy policy, a general Smarty Grants application or applicant guide, just to help you with the system, and then some more information on our community funding pages. So you'll click on one of these links to take you to the fund that you want to apply for, and that will take you across to that application form. So I've just clicked on the events fund, and this takes you into the events application form. So that is the general detail about how you start applying for the funds. So I'm just going to hand over to Jan now, and she can have a chat to you about the events fund. Jan.
Thanks, Marie. We're a wee way into this funding round for this year. So this is a district-wide events fund. It is for events that are held anywhere in our district. It is for events that are either commercial or community. And I suppose the key thing is to be aware it is events that are held from the 1st of July this year until the 30th of June. So it just covers 1 year of funding currently. This is a copy of our current event strategy vision, and you can see that we are promoting a balanced portfolio of sporting and cultural events. So that really opens it up to a variety of events that can be held here, whether they be, as it says, recreational, economic, or just about bringing our community together. Thanks, Marie.
A moment. There you go.
Thank you. This year, we've been holding this funding round for just on 10 years now, and initially it was set up to encourage events to come here. We used to have what we called shoulder seasons. They were gaps in the calendar of events, and so we had the opportunity to bring some new and exciting events into the calendar by attracting them with some funding support. Over the years, we have evolved and changed into looking at other aspects of our events that have an impact on our environment, and specifically around our waste reduction and carbon neutral. So this year we are totally focused on this aspect of events. And we've worked with Kath and Kirsty, who's in our climate action team, to work on a really good guide and a template that will assist you in this process. We are not expecting you to come up with your own plans. In fact, we would prefer, if you do already have some work done in this space, to transfer that information across into the template that's provided as part of the funding application. The reason for that is to give us consistency in the information that we are receiving from you. We know that all events are quite different, and everybody will be in a different stage of this journey. And so it's really important for us to gather some data and be able to support events moving forward, to be able to see that whole picture really is really key. So we really encourage you to read through the guidelines. There's some wonderful information there. We have already held a couple of workshops. We have a webinar that will be coming very shortly. And as I say, the guidelines are a very useful tool, as well as if you require, if you feel, have we done the right thing? Have we got the right information? Then, and if you're still not 100% sure, please do reach out to us, and we're more than happy to work with you one-on-one to assist you through this process. We're not expecting you to be the A++ in this first year. It's very much about working with us to have a strategic approach to this, so that we can support you through this. Thanks, Marie. So the key dates for you to remember are 30th of April. So that's when our events funding round closes. So if you're thinking the next day, 1st of May might be when you getting everything together? No, and I'm sorry, but that is a key part of having this wonderful process, is there will not be an opportunity to accept applications after that. We have a very short time frame to process these. They go through to a panel of councillors and management in May, and so at the moment, we don't know how many applications we will receive. It could be anywhere from 15 to 30. So there's quite a bit of work that has to go on behind the scenes. Once the applications have been assessed, they go to the panel. The panel has the ability to approve events up to $30,000. And then in end of June, I present a full report to council with a recommendation from the panel of up to 6 events that can be funded over the 30,000, and that is in the last week in June. So then we will notify all applicants, whether you receive funding or not, you will be notified of the outcome. So I have the wonderful Phoebe Arthur, who has started with me last year. Phoebe is also available to assist you through this process. She has a wealth of knowledge in the Smarty Grant space and is based in Wanaka as well. So look, it's about getting the information to us in plenty of time. It's about making sure that you have all the relevant documents you need. You will need quotes for the parts of your budget that you are applying to us for. These must be aligned to that sustainability. I can't reinforce that enough. That is what we are looking at this year. So it's so important that you have the plan, the templates, and then it aligns with your budget and with your quotes. Again, if you're not sure, is this something that can be funded or can't, come and talk to us, because we will assist you to get it right. I think all I can say is that we're excited again. It is always interesting to see who is organising what in our region, and we certainly punch above our weight when it comes to the event space. So we want to support events where we can, but we also need to balance that against our community and the impact. So reach out if you have any questions, and thank you for your time this evening.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jan. As I mentioned earlier, and for those of you that may have come on the call a bit later, we're not using the chat function at the moment, we're using the Q&A function. So if you do have any questions for Jan or for the rest of us on the panel once we get to the end of the presentation, please pop them in the chat, in the Q&A section, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentations. So I'm just going to briefly cover off the community fund. So the community fund is an evolution of funding that we've had available for many years through the long-term plan process that we normally run every 3 years as council. So what we've done is obviously, as part of bringing on this new platform, it's allowed us to really refine the process around this community funding and bring it into a community funding process rather than within the long-term plan. So the same application criteria apply in the sense of it's aimed at not-for-profit, charitable or voluntary community organisations working in the Queenstown Lakes District, and it's quite a broad fund in that you can apply for either operational funding or project funding or a combination of both. So we know that a lot of groups really struggle to get that operational funding. So often applicants in the past many have been for operational funding. So that is something that you can apply for as part of this fund. Once you get into the form, you'll see there's some questions in there. Over the past couple of years, we've pointed to the Vision Beyond 2050 statements, which are our key community vision statements. And we've asked questions in the past directly around how your service or project would support those community vision statements. what we've done this year is we've brought in a wellbeing framework that links into those vision statements. So you'll see in our application forms, and that's across all 3 funds. We've pulled these wellbeing framework questions in. This is for you to answer questions around whether your your grant application supports outcomes for people, place, or community. So you'll see there's 7 key areas. So under people, we've got healthy and fulfilled people. Sorry, that's a typo on there. A good standard of living, a healthy natural environment, an enabling built environment. And then under community, you've got connected communities, belonging and identity, and participation and governance. So you'll have an opportunity in the form to talk to how your organisation or project may support those community wellbeing outcomes. So we're keen to hear from you on those. And then within the questions, there's a number of factors we'll look at as part of the application process. But one of the things we're really keen to understand more is around creativity, innovation, and collaboration. So as the statement says, this is from our guide around the fund, that we do recognise that communities at the moment are facing increasingly complex challenges, and that creativity, innovation and collaboration can be hard, but it's also critical to the development of solutions. So we're really keen to see proposals that seek to respond in innovative ways, or particularly through collaborative partnerships. We know we're stronger together, so we're really keen to see how groups are talking to each other to try and achieve those wellbeing outcomes for our community. The Community Fund has some key dates. We're all pretty similar in our timeframes here. So the Community Fund round will close on the 7th of May, and through May we will also have an opportunity for applicants that wish to present to elected members. This is something we've done in the past, and our elected members were keen to see this continue. So we will provide this opportunity to those that wish to present. Please note this isn't a requirement of the application, so if that's something your group doesn't have capacity to do or doesn't feel they need to do, then that's fine as well. So we'll be in touch with those that may have already applied to provide them with some options for that. We're just still working through the dates for those potential presentation sessions. We'll have a meeting with the elected members on the 21st of May, where the applications will be formally assessed, and then the 27th of June we have a council meeting to approve final funding recommendations, and as same with Jan's, in July applicants will be notified of the outcome. So that is sort of the main general overview for the Community Fund. I'm just going to hand over to Kath to go through the Waste Minimisation Community Fund.
Thanks, Marie. If you just want to pop onto the next slide, May, please. I'm just going to run through very quickly and provide an overview of what the Waste Minimisation Community Fund covers. So the Waste Minimisation Community Fund, or WMCF, because it's quite a mouthful, is an initiative of our Waste Minimisation and Management Plan, which is our key strategic document, I guess, setting up the vision for where we want to head as a district and how we aim to try and move towards becoming a zero waste sustainable district. We have a total of up to $60,000 available through the fund. Of that $60,000, $10,000 is specifically targeted at commercial initiatives, and the remaining $50,000 at community-focused initiatives. We're really looking for projects that are focused on those high levels of the waste hierarchy, so reducing waste at source, as well as projects that then help us keep some of those resources in circulation through initiatives like reuse, repair, and repurposing of materials. The fund itself is open to individuals, community groups, businesses, iwi Māori organisations and education providers within the Queenstown Lakes district. And you will find some pretty extensive guidelines on our website going into more detail around the eligibility criteria if applying for an application. Next slide, please, Marie. So in terms of key dates for the Waste Minimisation Community Fund, ours is the newest, so we only opened this morning at 9 a.m. There will be 5 weeks to make an application before the fund closes on the 17th of May. As Jan and Marie have alluded to, we won't be able to enable late applications via this new platform, so please do get on to making an application if you plan to. We will then have a pretty extensive evaluation process with a panel made up of staff and key elected members. Once we've gone through that evaluation process, we will notify applicants towards the end of June, and funding will be available for uplift from 1 July once successful applicants have signed the fund terms and conditions applicable to the WMCF. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we have some really extensive guidelines, criteria, the application form, as well as some really great profiles detailing who has been successful in the past. If you're looking for some inspiration on what types of projects we have funded, I think this the fund was set up in 2018, and since then we've funded 48 amazing initiatives spread across some really cool food rescue, textile, construction, demolition and reuse education initiatives. We do really encourage participants to please get in touch with us via our Zero Waste inbox before making an application, so that we can help guide you to ensure that your proposal does fit with our fund and our guidelines, but also to ensure that there are no lost opportunities in being able to connect you with some other organisations that may strengthen your application. And any questions, again, are welcomed via that Zero Waste inbox should you need to some further information. Thanks, Marie.
Thanks, Kath. All right, so we're just checking on our technology actually and making sure, because we haven't had any questions, I believe. I'm just checking the notes from the rest of the team. We're just going to move into the Q&A section now, and we're looking on the Q&A section for any questions you may want us to answer about any of the funds. So I can see some coming through now. I think probably what I might need to do is just hand them over to some of the other team members if they're not something I can answer. Otherwise, I'll go through. Just checking my team members on the panel can also see the questions on the Q&A list. Great. So I'll just work my way through them. So this is from Rochelle. Hi Marie, what's the total amount of funds available for community fund over a 3-year time frame, and how many applicants do you expect? How long is a piece of string? Rochelle, that is so look, I would say there's, you can have a look on the community funding page for the list of previous applicants. Off the top of my head, there's probably been in the past around the 50 or so mark each year. So this community fund is a 3-year community fund, so applicants can apply for up to 3 years of community funding. In the middle, in the next year and the following year when we run the fund, you can only apply for a 1-year round of funding. So we do in 3-year cycles. So this year is a 3-year cycle. How many applicants? Look, I think there's a lot of interest in the fund this year. We know that community groups are under a lot of pressure, so we're definitely anticipating more applications potentially than normal. So I'd say definitely more than 50 applicants of community groups will be applying for those funds. But look, it's very hard to tell. The total amount of funding each year is over $1 million. I can't give you the exact figure, but in the middle years it's much less than that. So we tend to allocate most of the community fund in this 3-year cycle. I've got a question for my debt. Why was this webinar put out 2 weeks after the funding date opened? Is this regarding the events fund? Sorry about that. The timing was we hadn't decided we were going to do a webinar. We decided that we'd had some feedback from people that maybe that would be of value to some potential applicants. So we did decide quite late in the piece to do this webinar. This is the first time we've done something like this, so it's all pretty new to us. So hopefully we're doing an okay job, but we realise this, there's more we can probably learn about doing these, but we're hoping that we can pass on enough information for applicants through this process. As you would have noticed in the earlier slides, look, we're really keen if any of you want a bit of one-on-one time, you've got the chance to reach out to each of us, depending on which fund you're wanting to apply for a bit more of a detailed chat about your application. We're absolutely happy to do that if you require a bit more guidance and help. I'm just making sure I can see all of the, and then one of my colleagues also noted that we have released the funds in a staggered way. So while the events fund opened first on the 2nd of April, the community fund only opened on the 9th, and then this week the waste minimisation fund opened on the 15th. I'm just making sure. I can only see. Great, thanks, Odette. So Carleen has put a question for the event fund. This is for you, Jane. I understand as part of the eligibility, you need to make this open to the public. I heard that for funding, it needs to be a national event. Jan, do you want to respond to that one?
Sorry, I can't see the questions. I'll do my best. If I haven't quite got it right, just come back to me. So when you say national event, are you meaning possibly something that's held? It's got to be held in our district. So that's another part of our criteria. So we have a wide range of different types of events that aren't necessarily run by people that live here, but the event must happen here. It is for events that are looking for more than $5,000. So if you're wanting less than $5,000 to run a smaller community event, then you need to come and talk to us about our local community support. But I'm sort of a little bit and not quite understanding what you mean by a national event.
Carleen, if you feel confident enough, you can jump on to I believe you can jump on and ask the question verbally, or feel free to just write a clarification, or if that was enough of a response from Jan. I think basically just to summarise from Jan, the event, just the main criteria is that the event must be held in the Queenstown Lakes District, but we have a range of events, from community events, like in the past we've had community events like the Arrowtown Autumn Festival have received funding, right through to bigger, probably commercial events like the Queenstown Marathon, or kind of a combination event, which is something like some of the, I'm thinking of what's the Wanaka triathlon, Jan?
Challenge Wanaka.
So that's probably a challenge. Something like challenge is a bit of a combo where it's not really as big as the marathon, but it's still seen as a significant event, and it's got a fantastic community base to it as well. So there's quite a range of diversity in the types of events you get, right,
yes.
Jan?
And some of them have started in other places, as you've very well pointed out, Marie. The Queenstown Marathon, there were other marathons run by Ironman and other places, and they came here. And then we've got our wonderful homegrown events such as the Autumn Festival, which has been running for many years, but more lately Luma, which started here in the Queenstown Lakes District and has grown into a significant event. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great. Thanks, Jan. I'm just trying to keep on track. I think we're having a few issues, but I think there's another question. It may not be visible to everyone. Does the community have to be registered to apply for the funding? That's from Sanj, I think. Not sure exactly what you mean by registered. If you mean that you need to be a formal registered community organisation, so like an incorporated society, yes, for the community fund. I know for Kath's fund you don't have to be, though there is some criteria there around how much funding you may be able to receive. Kath, can you clarify that?
Yeah, that's correct, Marie.
Yeah.
So for applications under $1,000, we do enable applications from individuals or sole traders, but anything above 1,000, you do need to be a legal entity.
Yeah, and same with the events fund for Jan, right? You need to be a legal entity for those applications.
Yes, and having some form of structure. Yes, yep. And
Right.
I'm now able to see the question. So can I just clarify? Yes, your event does need to be open to the public. There is a aspect of this process that involves return on investment. So that's why we don't fund conferences that aren't open to the public to attend, where you might have a membership. So hopefully that now clarifies that for you.
Thanks, Colleen. So one from, can one organisation apply for more than one fund? So for community funding, you can apply because you're applying potentially for operational funding. Yes, you can, but I know for Jan's fund, you have your criteria where you won't allow them to also be applying for another community fund. Is that correct? You can just, sorry, just to get you to clarify that one, because it's a bit different for the community fund.
And I think we're looking at a little more flexibility in that space. So as long as you're not applying for the same thing. So I think probably a really good example would be Kath's fund and our fund, because we're looking at sustainability and waste reduction. Obviously, you couldn't apply for your event for the same things and then top it up with funding from us or vice versa. But if you were looking at some other aspect of your sustainability practice that didn't align with the event, then Kath and I would talk about that. We work quite closely together on this fund, so there could be the possibility for a little bit of flexibility there, depending on what you're applying for.
Yeah, and that would be the same for the community fund. Again, we'd expect you not to be applying for the same thing to the different funds. So, and we would, we work all quite closely together on these applications. So we'd be discussing any crossover and how to manage that potentially. I think we have one other question earlier. I've talked a little bit about the funding that's available, but just to clarify further, when you're thinking about the community fund, we get a really wide range of applications. So if you look historically at what we've funded everything from a small fund of a couple of $1,000 through to $100,000 or more in some cases. However, there isn't any additional funding this year, and as I mentioned earlier, we are potentially expecting more applications than we've had in the past. I think we will see, quite a few people applying to the fund potentially. So just something to be aware of when putting your application in and thinking about the amount you're requesting. We obviously really are keen to see that you've also talked to other funders and potentially applied to other funders. We wouldn't anticipate that these funds solely fund your work program, though obviously if they're small funding requests, that's a bit different. But if you're talking about larger funding requests, and then again, when you're thinking about, and this is more for me responding about the community fund, the level of detail you might be providing your application and any attachments, really think about the level of funding you're requesting. If you're only requesting a smaller amount, then we don't expect you to go too heavy in the additional information around your application. But if you're applying for a larger amount of money, we would expect you to see more comprehensive detail around what it is you're applying for, and the nature of the scale of what you're applying for will be taken into consideration when we're looking at how much information you've provided us. As it's in this will apply to all three of us. If there are any gaps in your application or we feel like there's a bit more information, we'll reach out to you and try and fill those gaps if we feel you haven't been able to answer some of the questions to the level that we need.
Marie, can I just jump on? I see there is another question there around no, that's all right. Around, can you please clarify if you are only funding sustainable components of events and no operational other needs? Look, that's a bit like Marie said before, how long's a piece of string? It will depend. The fund is not a large pot of money, so depending on the number of applications we receive, we will be focusing initially on that aspect of the applications. If there is funding left over after we have met all those requirements with the event organisers, then there is the possibility to look at other aspects of the event budget. But at the moment, we don't know what we don't know. And so it's key to saying, focus on that part of your event plan, please. And that's why we ask for your full budget. We ask for a little more information than just what you are providing. If we have that possibility, we can come back and ask for further information if we do need it. We only ever fund up to 25% of the budget as well. So that's something to be aware of too. So hopefully I've answered that one.
Thanks, Jan. So is this the question where there were two parts to it from Craig? So one was the
Yes,
fund,
I can't.
and then there's a second question. Are you supporting costs if the supplier isn't local, e.g. closed loop, who are set up to deliver sustainable needs for medium to large scale events?
Okay, well, that is, we have do have a bit of flexibility here. We'd want to understand why you might not use a local supplier, and I do understand in this case the expertise is there, but what we might look at is the possibility of being able to collaborate with events. So we may not just fund closed loop for your event, we might look at how that could be maybe used across 2 or 3 events and be able to make it more worthwhile getting information down here. We would hope that you would also start to look at ways of using local suppliers more, and I know that's we're very much at that early stage of finding those groups that might be interested in working with us, but we would love to develop that part of the program a lot more, and that's about some of the further work that we want to do in this space through this process. So look, we have a bit more flexibility this year in it because we really want to make this work. So if that's who you want to use and you can put a really good case forward for it, please do include that in your application.
Great, thanks, Jan. I'm just going to check we haven't missed anything else.
Marie, there's one question from Natalia up the top.
Up the top there. Thanks, Natalia. Glad we can organise the webinar. If we present a supplier in the project, but availability reasons, we have to change the supplier, would that break the terms and conditions of the application? I think that probably more relates to you, Jan. It doesn't really affect the community fund.
Right.
So if they put a supplier in their application that they're going to use a local supplier, I'm assuming she means, and they can't access that local supplier for some reason.
Okay, well, we require quotes, so you will have already reached out to the supplier. If that supplier between now and when your event is, because we pay out post-event, so that's something to be aware of as well, then just come back to us. Look, nothing's set in stone, and we totally understand that sometimes these things are outside of your control, but we would need to see the same level of support from a new supplier. So that's about a little bit of flexibility around who you might use, and that might be something we can support you with as well.
Yeah, and I would just add that in terms of the Waste Minimisation Community Fund, there is a bit of flexibility in that space as well. So if for a valid reason you did need to change supplier, there would be no concerns provided there was a nice clear communication chain.
Thanks, Kath. So I think we've come to the end of all of our questions. Just if there's anyone else, we'll give you 1 more minute to put a question in. But if and you can raise your hand too if you want to do that. But I think it looks like we've covered off most of that. So look, what we'll aim to do is we'll use some of the questions you've asked us are great, and we'll add them onto our frequently asked questions on the website. And as mentioned earlier in the presentation, with all of our contact details are available, and we can again share these afterwards with those that were on the call. So we'll get something sent out after the presentation. This webinar will be made available online, so those of your community colleagues who may have wanted to see this but weren't able to make it, please feel free to share the link once we have that up on the website. So I'm just going to close off. I just want to say thanks to my wonderful panel members. Great to work with you as always. Good first run at our webinar. So I'm just going to close with a karakia and end the webinar. Thanks very much. Unahia, unahia, unahia ki te uru tapanui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau. Te tinana, te wairua, ki te ara tawata. Koia rā e rongo, whakairahia ake ki runga. Kia tina, tina, huie, taikie. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and please get in touch if you need any further guidance on the community funds. Thanks so much. Bye.